Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Mary Ann Petrie. This episode of Slam the Gavel is sponsored by CPS Protect Consulting Services. A child protective services case is one of the most frightening experiences for any parent. Don't face it alone. Face it with confidence with Urgent Assist by CPS Protect. You can have access to former CPS investigators to make sure you preserve your rights and protect your family. If you're facing CPS involvement and aren't sure where to turn, their child welfare consultants can help you. Visit cpsprotect.com/subscribe and enter the coupon code Slam the Gavel for 60% off your first year of Urgent Assist. And this is available in all 50 states. I have another announcement. Bradley's mother, Narcus Golan, passed away in the fall of 2022. Bradley is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to Italian social services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system where he can't speak or understand the language. He will then be taken away from the only family he has ever known. Please call Governor Hochul, New York State at 518-474-8390. That's Governor Hochul, 518-474-8390 to please keep Bradley here safe in these United States. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. I have another announcement. Go to the site, pleasedoyourjob.com. We need 2,700 more signatures to get a case reopened. That's pleasedoyourjob.com. And the last announcement, you're invited to a Interference with Child Custody Coalition custodial interference press conference on October 31st, 2023 at 10:30. This will take place in the Pennsylvania State Capitol of Harrisburg, PA, and the main rotunda stairs. That's October 31st at 10:30 at the PA State Capitol, Harrisburg, PA. Main rotunda stairs. Now I've got a return guest on. I have Carrie McEwen back on, and she was last on the podcast, season 3, episode 113, and season 4, episode 50. And she's also on here with Phillip Simon, who I just had on a couple days ago. And they're going to talk a little bit about what's going on and who this judge is that's destroying their lives. And I welcome you both to the podcast. How are you, Carrie, and how are you, Phillip?
Thank you. Good to be
Thank
here.
you. Thank you for having me back, brother.
Oh, definitely. Well, hey, Phillip, who is this judge? And I meant to ask you, but then I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't ask him. Maybe he doesn't want to reveal the judge, but who was the judge? Who is the judge handling your case?
Well, the judge in my case, same as in Carrie's case, is a judge named by the name of Sharon Kalemkiariam. And she is the judge what's known out here for the will. So I guess any case that takes that requires more than 2 days to try, they send you down to this judge, and then she closes it up, if you will. And the problem with my case is, not going into detail with my case like I did last time, but my case, it may have needed an hour. We could handle my case in an hour. And the opposition, they said, the judge asked, at the time it was Judge Woods, Judge Williams Woods. He was the judge who heard the opposition say it was going to take 5 days to handle my case, which was a tactic the attorneys did just to get it out of his courtroom. So as soon as she said, as soon as the opposition said, oh, it's going to be 5 days, Judge Woods banged his gavel and said, oh, it's going on the will. It's going on the will. Mind you, at this time, I had no clue of what the will was, what any of that was about. And so I found out that it's going to this judge, and she's basically the closer. She handles all long cause trials. And the problem is it splits your trials up. So you could have whoever your main judge was still operating the case, and then it goes to her to operate the case. So now you have 2 judges essentially, and 2 judges, 1 case, 2 different departments. And what she did in my case in particular, she was aware that she had no jurisdiction back on the 3rd of March 2023, just earlier this year, where the opposition counsel told Judge Kalemkiariam that, my wife had no ties to the house. I made it clear to Judge Kalemkiariam at that time. I said, ma'am, so you're telling me a woman who I didn't marry, who was joined to the case, is now a part of my case, and we have to have this trial. We have to have this hearing, if you will, when you clearly understood that my wife is no longer a part of this. So now is me and another person who never married in the family law divorce case. And she said, I don't care. Basically, I could do what I want, and that's what it's going to be. But at that point, it was identified to her, and she recognized it, and I have official transcripts, and she's aware of the official transcripts. She doesn't care that she has no jurisdiction. So then months later, she tries to pull ahead with this phony trial that we had on the 27th and the 28th of July, which I told the judge, I said, ma'am, you are a named person in a federal lawsuit. She said, no, you're incorrect. You're not right. She said this on day one of the trial on the 27th. I said, ma'am, you're named. You can Google it. It's a federal. I can give you the information. She was like, we're not going to do that right now. So no problem. I knew we had another day. So the very next day, I came in ready and prepared. I handed her a brief. Oh, not a brief. I handed her the actual complaint, where I highlighted her name. And she didn't even want me to give it to the bailiff. She was like, don't give my bailiff anything. You only give it to him if I tell you to give it to him. I was like, well, ma'am, you're the one who called me a liar, and I'm just here to prove my side that I'm not a liar. Here's the complaint. And so she was like, okay, give it to him. So I gave it to the bailiff. He walked it over to her. She saw it. And then I said, ma'am, if you also notice, the person who's sitting opposite of me, the attorney that I'm going against, she's also in the complaint. And then she said, give it to her. So the bailiff walked the complaint to the opposing counsel. She saw it. And then she said, I don't care. The lawsuit is not against me. I'm like, ma'am, the lawsuit is against the San Diego County. The attorney who's representing the San Diego County is doing so on your behalf. How are you not an adversary at this point? I'm not an adversary. I'm not prejudiced. I'm not biased. I'm like, ma'am, if you're not biased, why did you allow the opposition to submit 1,860 pages 5 days before the hearing? Mind you, Judge M. Karen, she just got back off of vacation 3 days before she went into the trial with me on the 27th. So how do one judge read 1,860 pages 3 days before a trial to include my stuff as well? She didn't read anything. And this is the type of judge that we're dealing with. She's considered the closer. I'm told she has a different type of a career track as far as judges are concerned. I'm not real positive on that, but I can tell you right now, I've identified to this judge several times that she does not have the authority. She is past beyond being prejudiced and biased. She's out of her jurisdiction. She is a direct adversary of me right now, and you're still trying to have court. So like I said, the newest thing that she's trying to do to me on the 3rd of November, we're having a motion for a hearing for exclusive use for my house. Mind you, the opposition didn't even bring it up in the motion. They didn't even mention it in the trial brief. The judge, on her own reconnaissance, if you will, decided to have this hearing. And so the hearing is only allowed under the Domestic Violence Protection Act. So mind you, I'm not married to the third person party. So technically she has no standing under that act because she's not my wife. But this judge is allowing it to happen. So, and it's between her, like I said, is Judge Kalemkiariam, Sharon Kalemkiariam, Judge Wayne Williams, and there's another judge who I failed to name. Her name is Judge Penny McCaughlin. She's actually the judge that took over for Judge Woods. And when I went to her to explain to her that she was a named adversary in the complaint, she as well put up the argument that I'm not an adversary. I'm not prejudiced. I'm not biased. I'm like, ma'am, how can you be when there's a lawsuit and you're named in the lawsuit? Well, that has nothing to do with me right now. I'm like, ma'am, you've made orders that no law enforcement can exercise. I've had calls back at the police department. I've had the DA. I've had numerous law enforcement officials tell me that these orders made by these particular judges are not executable. They can't action them. They don't understand the orders. So I'm supposed to be protected by orders made by these judges who the law enforcement can't even enforce because they don't understand the orders. And when I go back to the judges to try to get them to fix it, they tell me, no, we're not fixing anything. There's nothing wrong. So here it is. I'm in this situation, and it's literally I'm in a lawsuit against the judges. You wouldn't even know that I'm in a divorce right now. You would think that all my battles are against these judges because that's all whoever I talk to. That's who does the arguing. I don't argue with the opposition. I argue with the judges.
Mm-hmm. They're the problem.
Yeah.
They are.
And if I could say one thing, but well, I'll let Phil finish and then I'll speak. But I wanted to talk about Phil's taking a unique approach in that he's actually filing lawsuits against these judges. But there is a form that throughout the United States of America, every judge in these family court proceedings are voted in, and people don't understand that these judges are actually voted in, and usually it's their peers that are supporting them and paying for their campaigns, which is other attorneys that are going to be in their courtroom. So first of all, that's in itself a huge problem.
Exactly.
But so we know that Judge Kalemkiariam is not going to come up for re-election until 2025. So she's basically running amok. But attorneys, if you talk to attorneys, they'll say, oh, she's a fantastic judge. Well, yeah, you can see why, because as soon as an attorney says, we want a 5-day trial, they know they're going to get a Judge Kalemkiariam type person. So this is set up for already the normal person to go down a bad hill. So if people would come to podcasts like this and find in their community when these family judges are coming up for re-election, and who these judges are that are continual problems. Like Phil's case, I already now noted who the judges are that he has had a continual problem with. But there is a form called preemptory challenge. And in California, it is a one-page form. It's just one page. And the minute you get a judge like a Judge Kalemkiariam, you pull up the preemptory challenge, you check it, and you say, I don't want that judge. And it's very difficult for a judge to deny it if she's not heard anything or he has not heard anything in your case. And so most likely she'll dismiss herself on the preemptory challenge. So had Phil immediately, before he even said boo to her, said, I want a preemptory challenge, he would have gone to another judge. It doesn't mean it's going to be a better judge. It just means it's not going to be this one who we now have identified is a problem. And when you hear Phil's case, you go, wow, this is a problem. And then when you hear my case, you go, okay, now this is not a coincidence.
Yes,
it's more than that.
They're targeting. It's a targeting effort on individuals that they think that they can get away with. But the problem with most cases, especially cases like ours, is we're not here because these judges just gave us a ruling that we don't like. You don't get to this level unless there is some kind of form of corruption and fraud done by these particular judges to bring us to where we're at right now. We're not here because the judges just say, hey, I don't like I'm going to rule not in your favor or whatever. In my particular case, the law was on my side. Now, in order for the judge to go against that, the judge has to violate the law. And the law was written well before I was even born. So that's the beauty of it. I didn't write the law. It's not my law. It's the law the law of the land. So these judges are purposely going against laws that have been established for years, only to make sure individuals like myself and Carrie do not come out on the end that we should. We most likely would prevail in our cases if it wasn't for these particular judges taking advantage of the system, taking advantage of our rights, our civil rights, violating our civil rights, and other individuals not knowing, like she just said, excuse me, that you can exempt to have these judges removed. Now, I will tell you, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
I've tried
They
to
can
have the
deny
judge
it.
removed.
Mhm.
A judge denied me in my civil case, another civil case that's a derivative of my family law case. Excuse me. Another judge denied me. He never even met me. He just said he denied it and said the timing is not right. How could the timing not be right? This is the most opportune time. I'd never met you. You never met me. I'm claiming to do a preemptive challenge. This is the right time. There is no other right time but now. And he was like, nope, I'm not doing it. And I stayed with that. I still have that judge right now. And he's still making, him with all the other judges. And my last little bit, and I'm gonna leave you guys with this. I understand that these judges, especially in family law, they're able to pass notes to each other that they can't do in criminal court, bankruptcy court, probate court, and other various courts, but they can do it in family court. So when you bounce from judge to judge, maybe within the same family law case or the same case within the same court system, they'll see these notes. And it's not just the judges. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves it's also the clerks. Remember, clerks have law degrees as well. So, and it's the clerks who are supposed to be the ones advising the judge. The judge is not supposed to be talking to anybody but that one clerk. And if they do so outside of the confines of their chambers, that's considered being out of jurisdiction. And the judges are making calls out of jurisdiction in many of our cases. They're discussing our cases with other people. And I know Judge Kalemkiariam, she does that. She'll tell you out. She'll tell you she does that. But she's still on, because I believe she is a long cause judge, and she does provide, I guess, a need for the court system for long causes. They allow her to get away with things, and being that the next time she gets voted is in 2025.
Yeah.
Wow, that's she
That's
has
why
some time.
she's having fun with all of us right now,
Exactly,
because she's
exactly.
getting applauded by her peers and saying, thank you, got rid of that long case that lasted 5 years in my case. Phil, I think you are going on, what, 3?
3. Yep.
And so, wow, she did great. Let's applaud her because she got rid of these, people who had just been here too long. And that's her goal, and she will make it clear that she's here to end it all.
Yes, exactly. So,
Well, I'm glad you came on to talk and explain further. And like I said, I'm going to have you back on with updates in the
no
future.
problem. I'll be here. I'll be available. Let me know.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And we will talk soon. Thank you.
All right. Y'all take care. Have a good one.
Thank you, Phil.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, Marianne, you tell me where you'd like me to start, because I'd like it to keep it as simple as possible. As you're now aware, the closing judge in my case was Sharon Kalemkiariam, and when you hear what I have to tell you, and I hope that I can do it in a very simple way that people will understand, because it's actually not even confusing, my case. Phil's was a little confusing for me. Other cases get confusing, but this one is so blatant and so in your face that it's very difficult to look at the court system the same way. So first, the background is I was married to a forensic accountant who worked for the San Diego PD and for the DA's office. His name is Michael McEwen. He is well known in Southern California. I would say he's a very popular forensic accountant, and I don't mean to give him, any accolades, but he specializes in fraud. So I think that's important when you hear about what he did to me. We had been married 10 years, and in 2014, I actually tried to separate from him. And like a lot of situations, we ended up getting back together, and we ended up staying until we finally divorced in 2018. But we were together, living under the same roof. He admits in his own deposition that we were together 10 years. I admitted we were together 10 years. Oddly enough, Sharon Kalemkiariam decided on her own it was a 6-year marriage. Now, you're going to have to explain that one to me right there, because I'm pretty sure she was never in my bedroom, but she has inserted herself in my personal life, in our bedroom, and ignored Mr. McEwen's deposition that he said in a video deposition, yeah, we still live together under the same roof. And that was in 2017, when we married in 2007. So I'm pretty sure that's a 10-year marriage.
Oh, yes.
But Judge Kalemkiariam, I think, has a problem with math, because she deemed it 6 years. And of course, my ex was excited and ecstatic that that was the case. So after she heard all of my case, which consisted of a fake post-marital agreement that Mr. McEwen put into the court system, and not only did he put the fake post-marital agreement, because California law is you have to have an attorney view these things, because when you're giving away your entire livelihood to someone, the courts think you better have an attorney. So Mr. McEwen was kind enough to say that I had been advised by an attorney who happens to be a well-seasoned attorney in San Diego named James Fox. And Mr. McEwen even put his bar number down in there. So there was no confusion, saying that he advised me about this post-marital agreement I knew nothing about. Judge Kalemkiariam heard James Fox's testimony in court March of this year, and James Fox said to her, I don't know these people. I don't know her, and I never advised her on any kind of post-marital agreement. So what did Judge Kalemkiariam decide? She decided he's a liar, because she ignored what he said. And she believed the post-marital agreement was to stand. Now, I also had what's called a judgment. I didn't even know about. And proof I didn't know. When a judge makes a final judgment, 2 people sign. And that's like any contract that you do, everybody's gonna sign it, right? And so if I have a final judgment, everybody gets to sign a paper, and it's actually called a stipulation waiver or final declaration disclosure. It's just 1 page. And I have it, and only 1 signature's on it. Lo and behold, it's only Michael McEwen's signature, because mine's nowhere around, because I didn't know about it. And that happened in December of 2016, this judgment. So according to the courts, I was in court with an attorney named Amy Lass. Again, another very seasoned attorney in a big law firm, Lass, at Griffin, and Young. They're a huge firm. Well, her name was on this fake judgment saying that she was in court with me. And of course, she came in and testified to Judge Kalemkiariam and said, I was never in court with this woman. I wasn't in court with her in 2014, and I was never in court with her in 2016. I talked to her on the phone. I've never even met her. But yet the court document, the final judgment, says that she appeared in court with me. And Amy Lass, the attorney, told Judge Kalemkiariam, no, I've never been to court with her. So what did our lovely Judge Kalemkiariam do? She said, I don't believe Amy Lass. I think she's a liar. So now we have 2 attorneys that look like liars. And the judge ignored them. I can't tell you why she would ignore them, but she did. And she ended up giving Mr. McEwen everything, my retirement, his retirement, everything. Left me penniless, with nothing. And he skipped out of there as happy as a clam. Now, remember, he worked for the DA's office as a forensic accountant. He has accounts all over Southern California. He's threatened to sue me, and I will be honest with you, I'm looking forward to it. Please sue me so we can maybe go to a civil court where hopefully there'll be more sane people than what I'm dealing with. And let me tell you, the most breaking news of all of this that should really send chills down everybody's spine when you hear about my ending story of how things went in court. So she gave Mr. McEwen everything. He was happy as a clam. He even had proof now that it was only a 6-year marriage. And so he was, you know, he's excited. He was, I'm sure he went and celebrated. And the judge at the very end, she held up a 1-page document. And she said, well, I have the, and this is all in transcript, by the way. She goes, I have the fake wage assignment. But she said, we're not going to address it because it's not in front of me. And she took it and she put it down and put it upside down next to her. Now, it was put in front of the courts. It was actually Judge Radican had already seen the fake document. And so she had already addressed it years ago. And what an earning assignment order is it's a court form, FL 435 in California. And it says that you are ordered by the courts to pay spousal support to the other party. And with that, it goes to the employer. And in Mr. McEwen's case, it would have been the San Diego PD. So they got a copy of this order, court order. Now, remember, these are court documents that are being manipulated. And so his work gets the fake earning assignment, the 1 page, and in it, you see my name that I'm ordered by the courts to get spouse. Now think about it. This is where it could get really confusing. He's saying he's giving me spousal support. And you think, well, why would he do that? Why would he do that? And it's going to his personal address. So when you think about it, you think, well, that's odd. Why would he do that? Well, because his second wife had garnished his wages for money that he owed her. And in order, she was taking money from his account every month. But guess what trumps her little judgment she had against him? Spousal support. So when my spousal support claim comes in from Mr. McEwen, this little fake document to his work, they stop giving his second ex-wife the money and they start sending it to supposedly me, but it was going to Mr. McEwen's private address that only he has ever had access for. In fact, when he advertised, it would be 113 West G Street. And lo and behold, that's where the check was going every month. It wasn't being automatically deposited into my account. It was a check actually being sent to his private mailbox. So now the second ex-wife can no longer garnish his wages because spousal support would trump that. So if you look at this, you think, wow, this guy is good in a very evil way. But
wow.
When I found out that this fake document existed, this wage assignment, I was perplexed, like probably anybody would be. And I went, I'm not getting any spousal support. What is this? And why is it going to his address? So I took it down to the courthouse and I spoke to the bigwig of all the clerks. And I think she's a bigwig, but because she's the boss of all the clerks over there. And I said to her, I don't understand. I don't ever remember getting a court order that said that he's giving me spousal support. And she immediately looked at the document and identified it. And she said, this document is fake. Now, remember, it's the court telling me this. Kim Stucker actually is the one who told me that. And I said, well, what are you saying? Why is it identified as fake? And she said, well, at the very bottom, it's signed. It's got a stamp that says C. Salazar. And she said that's not a judicial officer. That's actually a clerk. And that's his stamp. So that's not anything we would ever put on an earning assignment. And she said, and at the bottom, it says it was March 30th. And yet at the top, it was filed March 30th, 2017. And at the very top where it's the conformed copy, it says January 26th. 2017. And she said, and then she goes, we know we have on file that your ex-husband's address is 113 West G Street, but up here we see your address and the check is going to him. So she goes, yeah, that's fake. She goes, I'm going to call his work. Kim Stucker called the San Diego PD payroll and said, stop that wage assignment. That document is fake. Now remember, what did Judge Kalemkiariam say when she knew about this fake document? We're not even going to address this. And turned it upside down and decided we're not going to hear about that one. Because see, that one she can't explain away. Now, I tried to subpoena Kim Stucker and was told by the courts, oh, no, they blocked me. They said, well, you can't subpoena her. And I said, but she's the one who called and she's the one who told me about the fake document. But the courts, and you have to ask yourself, why can't I subpoena her? She's a court clerk. It's not like she's a judge, but they absolutely would not let me subpoena her. So the California makes a really big deal about people falsifying court documents or falsifying any kind of document, but especially a court document. So someone has to explain to me why is Mr. McEwen skipping away with all of this? And it all goes back to one person, Judge Kalemkiariam. Judge Radican identified the fake judgment years ago. She was ready to throw the book to Mr. McEwen. She even said to him, I believe you did it. And we have the recording of her saying that and the transcript of it. But Mr. McEwen's a sneaky guy. And he showed up with Judge Radican's best friend as his attorney. And his name was Alexander Viducci. And Judge Radican said, oh, well, this is my best friend, and I have dinner with him every Sunday. So I can't see cases in front of him.
And she said this in court?
Oh, open court.
Oh, is she delusional? And why would you admit that?
She did. And not only did she admit it, Viducci, you would think he would say, listen, Mr. McEwen, I can't take your case because I can't see cases with the judge you have, because he was very aware who the judge was. So you have to ask yourself, wow, who is the corrupt one? So this attorney, Viducci, takes McEwen's case, and Radican then dismisses herself and washes her hands of the whole thing. And then it stays in, we had COVID and we had all these things coming up. And so the case then showed up in front of Judge Kalemkiariam's courtroom. Now we have these fake judgments. We have attorneys who are being told they're liars. We have a fake earning assignment that didn't happen. So you would think, okay, well, I'm going to appeal it all because the Judge Kalemkiariam decided that it was all legit. So I think, okay, well, at least I have the appeals process. Judge Kalemkiariam is a tricky little judge in that she did a backhanded slide. She said, well, I'm going to hear the 2-day trial. And remember, she made a judgment that was only a 6-year marriage. And so she made what looked to appear to me a final judgment. Wouldn't you say that was a final judgment? Well, it turns out she didn't make it a final judgment. She instead said, oh, it's time barred. It's reached its limit of statute, meaning you can't appeal it. So she knew what she was doing. So instead of doing a final judgment, she did what's called finding an order after hearing. Well, I didn't know this, so I filed my appeal, and the appeals court said, we need a judgment, ma'am. You can't just have a finding and order after a hearing. We need an actual judgment. Well, I don't have an actual judgment because this judge decided to do some tricky maneuvering. She's very intelligent. She knows what she's doing. Is she corrupt? I don't know. Is she either inept and doesn't understand the law? I don't know. It appears she has a problem.
Yes.
And no one in San Diego holds any of these judges accountable for their behavior. So the only thing we have as individuals is to come together in your community and find people who are being abused and victimized by the court system, not even their partner, but the court system, and find out what judges are and what they're like, and file a preemptory and get rid of that judge that's a problem. And my warning to anyone in San Diego who walks in her courtroom and the attorney's telling them, oh, she's great, we like her, maybe you have a chance. But most of people that walk in her courtroom, if it's a long trial and the opposing counsel wants a 5-day trial, they put you in that courtroom on purpose in front of Judge Kalemkiariam so you could have the lovely dance that I had to dance with this judge.
Well, were they recording your whole case? I guess I've heard that, sometimes they just don't record cases. The presiding judge, Mike T. Smyth, sometimes refuses, and he just doesn't want to do recordings in family court, but it's okay for small claims court.
Yes, in San Diego,
right.
They actually record from beginning to end the entire hearing in small claims court. And then you can go down to the clerk's office and you can order the copy. And the copy is like $20, $30. It's very cheap. If you have a fee waiver, it's free. But in family court, they have all the equipment ready to go to record the entire hearing. But instead, Michael T. Smyth, the presiding judge, my understanding is that he has said, yeah, we're not going to use that equipment in family court. If these people want to have it recorded, they need to hire a court reporter. Well, in San Diego, a court reporter costs $500 an hour just to sit there and type. And then if you want the transcript, it's going to be anywhere between, $2,000 and $3,000 to get the transcript. Now, in California, a lot of the attorneys here are anywhere between $300 and $700 an hour. So when you put those factors together, there's a lot of people making a lot of money. There's attorneys making a lot of money. There's the court reporter making a lot of money, and all because Judge T. Smyth decided they don't want to do a recording in family court. So let's punish the people in family court further.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting here going, first of all, why do we have family court? Why is it even called that? It should be abolished completely.
I agree.
Put me in a civil court. That's why in the beginning I said, if Mr. McEwen wants to sue me based on my evidence and the proof that I have, I would welcome it in civil court out of San Diego into another court. I would want the venue changed because it appears that San Diego has some issues. Now, is that, I can't, I've always thought the judicial system was blind. Unfortunately, I've learned that's a falsehood. It's not blind. It's based on, family court is based on emotion. It's based on if the judge likes you or not, if you've upset the judge. There's no critical thinking when it comes to what we call family court. And honestly, for a big part of the population, it should be called maybe domestic court at minimum instead of family court, because it's more of a domestic issue. San Diego prides himself on being very advanced in the LGBT community, and yet nobody in family court has any respect for that community at all. The system is not even set up for a big part of the population who find themselves having to go through a divorce or a domestic dispute, who are of the LGBT community. And really every judge in the courtroom should be asking, what's your pronoun? I know some people might not like that, but respectfully, they should. And I'm going to stand up for that community and say, shame on you, San Diego. Not only do you not want to record the hearings, we can now kind of see why you don't, because you don't train your judges to address the population of people who are vulnerable. And it's not just women, it's not just, men. Look at Phil's case.
Mhm.
It's any vulnerable person that can't afford this expensive system. So really the only people benefiting from the San Diego courts are the people with money,
Mhm.
not the poor people. Doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter who you are. It's money against no money. And that is a shame. And shame on Michael T. Smyth and all the other so-called progressive leaders of California who hide behind the money. Because California, unfortunately, is about who has the most money wins.
Mhm.
And as we're going into the courtroom, stepping over homeless people, and we're giving away $700 to the goofball attorney, family law attorney next to us. It makes zero sense.
Right, and they're doing this to Phil Simon, and he's a veteran,
Yeah,
and they're totally
that's what I said. They have no
disregarding his back.
boundaries.
It's sick, it's just disgusting.
Mhm. It is disgusting. And it's disgusting for the American people who don't have the finances and the money. And, like I said, San Diego stands up and says, we protect the vulnerable. We protect the people of,
Mhm.
the LGBTQ. We protect them, which is baloney. They don't protect them.
Mm-mm.
And so I I'm very saddened that people think that California is so progressive when California is about people who like Michael McEwen who just make a lot of money off of the system. And people in our community of San Diego say, well, he's got more money. He's got more clout. He worked for the DA's office. He is a forensic accountant, and she's a nothing. Doesn't matter what my gender is. I'm a nothing. And that's the problem. Therein lies, in my opinion, the problem is if you don't have money, you are not going to get anything but the hearing that Phil got or I got. Because Phil's a VA on disability.
Mhm, mhm.
And so his income, I can't speak about his income. I'm assuming, given the facts that,
Mhm.
he's on disability, but they don't make money enough to pay some attorney $700 an hour and a court
Mhm.
reporter 500. I mean, the whole system is just a shameful mess. And, if anything, they should have a courtroom of AI judges. I'm not, I don't care if you're for it or not for it, but from what I've seen from these family court judges, they rule on their emotion. They have affairs with other people, and then
Mhm.
the whole thing is just a joke on the whole judicial system. And at the
Mhm.
end of the day, Marianne, all we have is a judicial system. And if it's not protecting the poor and the innocent and the vulnerable, then who that frick are they protecting?
Oh, they're protecting each other and
Thank you.
their little relationships, and, when there's a campaign or even if their kid is running for judge, attorneys will kick in for that too. Uh, we were talking earlier, and apparently there was, a gay couple that were divorcing, and was it, I can't even still pronounce her name. Uh,
Judge Kalemkiariam.
yeah, I
And
don't know why.
actually, I was in the courtroom, and it was a young man who was a victim of domestic violence,
Mhm.
and he was dressed, very nice in female clothes, but he went in front of the judge, and my heart. I actually cried in the courtroom. It's to this day I still tear up because he was so innocent, and he was looking to the judge to get a restraining order on his partner who was beating him up.
Mm.
And the judge's reaction shocked me because she said to this young man, he was saying, Your Honor, this restraining order is going on too long, and it's a temporary. I'd like to get a permanent. And she said, well, why don't you just get back to him and then get back with him, and then you won't have any problems. And my mouth dropped. And as this young man left, excuse me, as this person left, and I don't know what their pronoun is, so I don't mean any disrespect, but as they left the courtroom, I was devastated that they were treated so disgustingly
Mm.
by a judge who didn't care at all about what he or they were going through. And that's heartbreaking to me because again, I see vulnerable people coming in and out of that courtroom. I've actually had people in the courtroom stop me and say, "Oh my gosh, can you help me? Do you think you?" And I'm like, "I'm not an attorney. I know I've got all the paperwork and I look like I know something, but I said I'm here just like you, trying to figure out a very broken system that has no respect for the poor and the vulnerable."
Or is it broken? Because I think it's working like a fine, well-oiled piece of machinery that continues to grind and churn out parents and kids and destroy them. I think it's a moving machine that's working quite nicely, and that's how they want it to work so they can make more money.
Well, and if you know how the system is set up, the attorneys are the ones who vote those judges in. And
Mhm.
they pay for those judges' campaigns so they can sit on the bench.
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but I
Yep.
never hear about when a new judge is going to be, or a judge is coming up for reelection. But boy, the attorneys who are in that courtroom know exactly who the judge is that's coming up for reelection. And they support them in their campaign. And I don't think a lot of Americans understand that these judges you're in front of, they're paid and bought by the attorneys.
Mhm.
And that's a shame. That is, and when I say broken system, I say it facetiously because
Mhm.
you and I unfortunately have dealt with this system too long to think it's just broken. You eventually wake up and say, "Oh, it's not broken. It's exactly designed to do what it does."
Yeah.
And you clearly can see that. And the sad part again, the most vulnerable, the children, the you know the gay and lesbian community, people transgendering, mothers, fathers, it has no boundaries of who it will take down and hurt. Now that should have disturbed all Americans,
Mhm.
really, because it doesn't matter who you are. It matters what money do you have and can you afford to pay that judge's campaign so they can find in your favor, because those judges owe those attorneys. And then the California is run by attorneys, not by judges. Judges are mouthpieces for the attorneys that bought them.
No, you're absolutely right. That happened in my case as well. I went to recuse the judge because he was BFFs with the opposing attorney,
There you
and,
go.
um, and then I went before another judge where this opposing attorney contributed to his daughter's judge campaign. So I didn't have a chance with
You
either
have a
of these
chance.
judge no, and they all knew what they were doing, and the thing is, well, people know my story, I don't wanna go into it, but I it's just so this is what they're doing, and they're doing it everywhere. And it needs to be abolished, and we need to go take it down to civil court where you can have a jury if needed, if a person wants a jury.
And it should all be recorded. I'll give you a perfect example. I went up to the very top floor in San Diego in Broadway.
Mhm.
And if you've ever been to San Diego, it's an absolutely beautiful, lovely area. The courthouse is overlooking the harbor. You can see the ocean. And so I went to the very top, and every time I've been up there where the presiding judge's office is, his courtroom, there's no one there. It's like crickets. So you have this big long hallway, these huge double doors. It's like you're going into the heavens, and there's stained glass. And so I found it very beautiful. And I had my camera out. Mind you, no one was there, Marianne. I was the only one on that top floor. And the doors to the courthouse where Judge Smyth was locked. So no one's getting
Right.
in. so I was just taking pictures of the stained glass and all the beauty and the boats out in the harbor, and bailiff came out with his gun right ready, holding it, and told me, "You aren't allowed to record up here. You need to leave." And I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure I'm still in America. I'm not recording anybody. There's no one here but me. What is it I'm doing wrong? And he was adamant, I'm not allowed to record in the courts. And I'm like, well, I'm not in the courts, I'm in the hallway. But you know, you realize really quickly that they have a regime of sheriffs that will take you to jail if you irritate them.
Mhm. Well, you know,
And
I bet that was picked up on a camera, so that probably alerted
yes,
them that you were there. Okay. 'Cause
yes, it was.
I know when I had to go pick up some transcripts, I walked down the hall because my judge had been deceased at, moment of silence. Okay, so anyway, so he was deceased. Okay, but they had his picture in the hallway. So I had, was holding my transcripts and I look at him and I gave him the finger. Then I looked up and I saw the camera.
Ooh.
And then I just like ran my my fingers
Like
through
you were
my
just,
hair. Yeah, like, whoops.
no big deal.
Yeah, because it's like, I don't know what they have just had it in for me as well as other target parents. You don't know if giving a deceased judge, the finger it can get you in trouble or not.
Well, it probably would have got you in trouble. And like Phil said, we've kind of uncovered that they do take notes in family court, the judges, and it
Mhm,
goes in your file, and then it goes wherever you go. And then that judge hears what that other judge was making comments about you, and you never get to know those notes. But we do have evidence right now that they do that. And, Marianne, again, at the end of the day, I'm an advocate for vulnerable people in
mm,
our life, and not to be teary-eyed or anything, but we have people in our society of all walks of life, especially down in San Diego, who are literally very so vulnerable and should be so respected. And that's not, and I'm not saying that about a one group of people. I'm saying in general. I've cried with mothers who have literally had their children ripped out from them because a minors council decided she was in a cult. And because that minors council decided the mother was in a cult, she shouldn't have her children, and gave it to the father. And that, if I told you who that cult was that this minors council deemed, you would be horrified. But regardless, a minors council made a decision. Now, what the heck is happening here? When an attorney, because that's what minor counsel is, he or she is just a low life attorney.
oh, yeah.
Oh, that's going to get me in trouble, but I don't care. They're
Yeah,
low lives
they
when you
are.
take away children from parents
Mhm,
for a reason like that, based on the fact that this woman didn't deemed that this mother was in a cult. And
mhm,
she actually wrote an email saying the mother's in a cult. And the mother's, half of another, she's of a, she's half Japanese.
mhm,
And it doesn't matter what you're half of. You don't take someone's children for that reason,
mhm.
or deem them a flight risk because
Oh,
they're half of another nationality. And it doesn't mean it matter Japanese, Mexican, Hispanic. It doesn't matter. You don't use those for a reason.
mhm,
Logic tells you, okay, if she's a drug addict, some kind cocaine addict, now I can kind of sympathize why the courts would do that. But because some low life attorney says something, that's gospel. And these minors councils, these judges have decided, let's just put it on the minors council, and whatever they say we'll do. And that's sickening. Like, that's sickening because, again, a lot of these minors councils became minors councils because they can't make it in the real courts,
yeah.
and this is a way they can get paid by the courts. And
Uh,
they do. The courts pay them an hourly rate to do this job. I don't know what attorney would want to do that. unless you're one that's just not real bright and decided this is a good way to make some extra money. But there should be no such thing as a minors counsel.
Right.
Give me a break.
Right. That's a third party parasite along with the guardian ad litem, which is probably what that is anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love the word parasite because I don't have any other way to describe the minors counsels that I have come across, because unfortunately, like I said, I've sat in a lot of courtrooms and I kind of made it my job at this point. I enjoy going into the courtrooms and hearing these judges and their behavior. And you know, the saddest thing at the end of the day is I'm not even surprised anymore, right?
Right.
You're just like not even shocked. You're just like, oh, that poor person, as you see them walking out of the courtroom going, what just happened to me? And you realized how steamrolled they were.
Well, I won't keep you too much longer, but I mean, like when you see this stuff and their behaviors, because when I was court watching, I was told to, and I was asked by a parent, like, could you report this judge to the Florida whatever? And so I wrote down all the behaviors that this judge was just misbehaving on top of and then I had to write up the opposing attorney because she was misbehaving. Like laughing at a pro se parent while they're trying to get their kid back. I mean, these are sociopaths. So I gladly wrote up the behaviors, and then you get the namby-pamby letter back. But if everybody wrote these letters to and you know above of these judges' behaviors,
Mhm.
you know, what are they gonna do? I mean, if they get too many letters on these people, can they get them disbarred or off the bench?
Well, I'll tell you what I have chosen to do, and then I'll let you go because I know I've
That's a,
spoken too long.
no,
But
you're fine.
I have in San Diego, I have a website. Excuse me, an email, and I will be putting up a website um, for anyone who goes into the family court system in San Diego. If they want to learn about the judge that they're going to go in front of
Mhm.
before they go and sit in front of them, and that judge makes any kind of ruling or decision, I would say you should look at my website, and the website's going to basically let you know when a judge is coming up for reelection, because
Mhm.
that's number one most important, because you have a right to vote and you have a right to let that judge know, oh, I know you're coming up for reelection, and you know, I don't want, you know, they can make comments on on that judge. But the main thing is a lot of people don't know about the preemptory.
Mhm.
And so if they're seeing on our website a lot of bad about that one particular judge, and they go, wow, that's a judge I'm going to go to. Now, granted, you always get the people go, oh, I had that judge and I loved her. You know, yay for you. But the
Yeah.
majority, it's not like that.
Mm-mm.
So they can go to the website and they can say, okay, I see that judge is a problem. And they can download the preemptory challenge, and they can take that into the court. Because if that judge is not keeps getting preemptories and nobody's wanting to go in front of them, guess what will happen to that judge? Better than letter writing, my friend. Because if there's no money there for that court to make, and that judge is sitting there and no one wants to go in that courtroom, guess what? Bye-bye. They're not going to
Nice.
last long. So I like the letter writing, but I've learned this preemptory is something we should really look into, and look into when these judges are coming up for reelection. Because if they're coming up in 2025, they're probably don't care what they do, and they'll do whatever they want. They run amok. But if they're coming up for reelection in a month or two, you know, now we have maybe something to work with. So thank you for
Well,
allowing me to share it. But if they want to go to at least my email, and
mhm.
then I can let them know when the website will be up and
Sure.
running. It's really easy. It's KARIELEES closet. Carrie Lee's closet at G for George, M for Mary, X for xylophone. So gmx.com. Karielee's Closet at gmx.com. If they are in San Diego and they would like to know about this website, it's right now, we're just going to direct it to the San Diego family court judges.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I will put that in the podcast notes. I'm so glad I had you back on. And I'm sorry your case went that way. But God is watching, but don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I am your host, Mary Ann Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, and the recently released Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. Please join us again here with Carrie, and I'm going to have her back on again. And you can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, and feel free to buy me a coffee to help support this podcast. So thank you very, very much, Carrie. I totally appreciate you.
Thank you, Marianne.